Hi, and welcome to Schmooze with Suze. I'm Suze Montgomery, and wow, I don't know what to say about our first guest other than wow. This is pretty exceptional. I met Sheila through the internet on Facebook, and when I started reading about her and reading her bio, I thought, oh God, I got to meet her in person. And then I thought, well, let's get her on the show. So I asked her if she'd be interested, and she said yes. And she brought some samples, so I want to invite you to meet Sheila Lowe, who's a handwriting
analyst and
author, and
handwriting examiner.
Well, let's start. So you moved here, you moved from where? So where did you grow up, basically? Let's start with there.
Well, I'm from England, but that was a long, long time ago. I came over here just before the Beatles. They followed me over.
The Beatles?
The Beatles.
You still have the accent, okay?
A little teeny bit, yeah. So, but I grew up in Anaheim, went to Anaheim High School, and eventually ended up in Valencia, which is where I was before I came to Ventura, which I'm happy to say was like coming home.
Really love it here.
I love Ventura, yes.
I can see why. I also, like I said off camera, moved from Valencia in '81 to here, and I thought I had this crazy illusion that everybody in Ventura was tall, blonde, and skinny. Not the deal.
Obviously not.
No, I got here and it's like, really, they're not. Yeah. But let's get back to how you, well, first of all, your childhood. Typical childhood, nothing unusual?
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm trying to figure out how you, well, let's ask you just outright, how did you start with handwriting analysis?
I was in high school. So this was in 1967, the year I graduated. And my boyfriend's mother had read a book about handwriting analysis, and she analyzed mine. And reading those
accurately?
Yeah, reading that 2 pages, she hand wrote it all out. And I was like stunned, you know, somebody really understands me. At 17, that's kind of important, you know.
Well, you need to be accepted at 17 more than anything else. I mean, you're a little bit fragile at that stage. So did you have to study to learn how to do this, or how did? So it's a whole curriculum?
Yeah, they're not teaching it in the colleges. Maybe, you know, like in adult education sometimes,
okay.
But not in the regular curriculum. So you have to find a private person to do it with. And I studied with somebody called Charlie Cole, who had what we then called correspondence course. Now, of course, they're distance learning, but it's the same thing. And so I studied. But first, when this woman had introduced me to handwriting analysis, and I didn't realize at the time she was checking me out to be a daughter-in-law.
Oh, the plot thickens. Okay.
Yeah, I did marry her son.
Interesting.
And later we divorced after having 3 beautiful children. But I studied on my own for about 10 years, just getting every book I could get my hands on and studying. And then finally I found some places where I could take courses. Yeah.
Fascinating that, because when I was a kid growing up, because we're pretty much the same age, I was fascinated by like watching Perry Mason and all the old TV shows that actually did have, occasionally they'd have somebody on there. And in those days though, it was not really considered a real type of medium at that point. It was kind of mystical, but actually using it in courtrooms, now you use this actually in a courtroom setting, correct?
Right. There's 2 areas that I work in. Some handwriting analysts work in one or the other, and some work in both, as I do. So on one side you have what's called graphology, which is a study of personality through handwriting.
Oh.
See, like it comes from 2 Greek words, graphine and logos, which is to write and to study. So it's the study of writing. So that's about personality assessment. So I do that. I like working for companies who are hiring and making sure that they're getting the right person for the job, things like that. And then on the other side is handwriting authentication, where I go to court and testify in cases of forgery.
What a fascinating career.
Yeah, it has its moments.
Okay, so if you're actually analyzing someone, just like you said in graphology, there's certain things that you look for in characteristics of signatures, or is it a body of a letter or just phrases? What do you look for as far as analyzing this in their handwriting?
Well, the size of the sample to start with,
okay.
The more is better. And to look at just a signature, it's like if I showed you a picture of somebody's nose, you know, like how much can you see?
Correct.
That's kind of how it is just looking at a signature. You can see some things, but you need to compare it to the body of writing to determine the truthfulness of the signature. If the signature is very similar to the rest of the writing, you could say generally what you see is what you get.
Okay.
But if it's very different, then you have somebody who's different on the inside. The signature is pretty much what you show to the world. It's like the cover on a book. And inside may be different from the outside.
Well, for example, I'm thinking for one specific example of like John Hancock, everybody, you know, in the signing of the Declaration, his signature was so much larger than everyone else. So looking at that, you would be able to analyze more like a personality traits?
Well, the legend of John Hancock is that he signed his name big and bold so that King John wouldn't have to use his spectacles to read it.
Interesting.
And
okay.
Let me get it right, the Writing Instrument Manufacturers Association started National Handwriting Day back in the 80s, and they used John Hancock's signature, you know, sort of as a representative. They celebrate it on his birthday. So January 23rd every year is National Handwriting Day.
I didn't even know we had one. So, and then you belong, we were talking about this off camera, you belong to a, I guess it's a whole cadre of people that actually do this. I mean, so you've got, and you go to conventions, and I'm just blown away by this. I didn't realize it was that sophisticated.
It's not a huge group, but I am the president currently of the American Handwriting Analysis Foundation, which is a 50-year-old nonprofit educational organization. And we have conferences, and we have online meetings, so make it easy these days for people to attend.
Do you constantly learn?
Sure.
Are you constantly learning something new?
Yes. A couple weeks ago, I was working in San Francisco for Adobe at one of their conventions, and a lady sat down and gave me her handwriting to analyze, and there was some features in there that I had never seen before. And trust me, I have seen everything.
How
but
dramatic.
Apparently not.
I mean, did that astound you, shock you, or?
Well, it surprised me, yeah. But as I talked to her, I could understand how it fit in. I mean, I'm not psychic. People sometimes ask me if I'm psychic, but everything that I say about a handwriting is based on scientific principles, and I can back up what I say by pointing to the handwriting.
And this is used in a courtroom?
Sometimes. The graphology part is used very rarely, but I have qualified to testify about behavior.
Very interesting.
There are precedents in 10 states at least.
Well, I looked you up on the internet, you know me, Google search here, and you actually, the one that I got a big kick out of was the 2016 presidential candidate signatures, and you brought some samples. So let's talk about what you brought, because I'm kind of fascinated by this, and one in particular. So let's go from the highs to the lows, or the lows to the highs.
Okay, well, I didn't bring the candidates except for the winner. But you had asked me about Richard Nixon.
Yes.
So shall we start with him?
Yeah, let's start with Richard Nixon. Boy, topical today.
Well, Nixon's writing is interesting because of the extreme left margin, and it pulls to the right. Everything in handwriting is symbolic, and the left side of the paper represents the past, and the right represents the future. So what this is telling us is that he's pulling away from the past. He's rushing towards the future, although he's pulling in also from the right. So there was a lot of concern. Basically, it's a paranoid writing.
Wow.
Which probably won't be a surprise.
Well, that's not a big surprise to anybody.
No.
But it's interesting. I notice it's very cramped almost as well. There's no flourishes, is that?
Well, simplification in handwriting is a good thing. We don't want to write the way we learned in school. Okay. Because that's like riding a bicycle with training wheels. There's lots of extra strokes that you don't need. And so we cut them off and make the handwriting more simplified. If we think fast, a person who thinks slowly can't write fast. And it's hard for a person who thinks fast to write slowly. So what we do when we write fast is to cut off the unessential details, like extra loops.
So like clipped, more or less, clipped writing.
yeah, I mean, there's a whole spectrum, of course. But I think one of the other interesting things about Nixon's writing is the extremely long T-bars, the T-crossings. They go away. And this is after he left office. Before when he was in office, they were much longer. And people who have extremely long T-bars, in general, I'm just generalizing now, they get things done by their willpower. They really know how to direct other people.
Interesting analysis.
He was very strategic.
Well, you could read a lot into that one. Okay, who else
Much
did you
more,
bring?
but we're just kind of looking at a little overview. Okay, well, let's just get right into the president.
Here we go, guys. Buckle up.
I don't think I can say anything that will be a surprise, but I'd like to point out the difference between his signature and the rest of his
By the way,
writing.
this is Donald Trump.
Yes, this is Donald Trump. Anybody, I mean, he's very consistent. I started looking at his handwriting in 1992. So anything I say now is still, I mean, I was saying then, so it's not just because of what I've seen and disliked in the past couple years.
Okay, so in 92, has it changed dramatically? It's
No,
still consistently
it's
the same?
exactly the same.
He has not changed.
Right, and remember I said that when you have the signature different from the rest of the writing, what you see is not what you get. The person is different in what they show to the world than who they are inside.
So what would you get out of this one?
Well, the signature, actually it looks like Heinrich Himmler's signature.
Oh, that's a great
really-
analogy. Okay.
That's on my website and you can see for yourself.
Oh, geez.
But
another sterling cast of characters.
He's going like this. It's extremely rigid. There's no softness in this signature. There's no openness. It's like an accordion that's shut. And that, you know, he's rigid. He doesn't allow other people's opinions. It's arrogant because of the extremely large capitals. But look at the last letter here. This has to be the P, I guess. And it comes slashing back through, back to the left. And this shows self-destructive tendencies.
Interesting.
The rest of the writing, it's block print. And he always uses, or I should say virtually always uses, a heavy, thick felt pen.
Why is that?
Well, people who do that, they like the way it looks, and they like the appearance of power, and they like luxury. But with a thick felt tip pen, you don't press hard. You don't have to work hard to get the effect.
Boy, you nailed this one so far. Okay.
And the oval letters. See, one thing about handwriting is nothing means anything by itself. You can only interpret a particular feature within the context of that writing.
Okay.
So anything I say about this, it means in this writing. And the oval letters have a little stroke inside them.
Oh, yeah.
The oval letters should be clear because they're about communication. And when there's a little interference like this, some handwriting analysts call it the sign of a liar. And I'll show you another one.
This is interesting to me because of its, not only is it bold, but it's at a slant, and I'm sure that probably means something too, but I can see that little mark inside like the O, which comes straight down, and it's pretty consistent throughout this document. But what's disturbing to me, and as I watched the president, I'll just call him Trump for all, you know, because it's hard for me to get that word president and Trump all together. As I watch the signature, and when he goes to sign one of his executive orders, no bills yet, I see this, and it's so rigidly, like it's an angry slash almost, and then the, you know, the juvenile turning around and showing everyone was very dramatic to me as well. It's like he was 5 years old, and it was very upsetting to me. But this is consistent with the one that I have seen on TV, which is slash slash. Although it's somewhat even in the balance throughout the middle, and it's hard to even interpret this as a signature. It's like on either side, it's very angry.
It looks like a fence.
It does.
A wall.
So when you go to analyze this, I mean, you can really read everything into a personality by this.
Well, yeah.
Quirks, everything.
And the fact that he writes on a diagonal,
Yeah, what's that
he
all
always
about?
does that. It's doing things his own way. It's repudiating the rules and regulations and just doing it how he wants to do it.
Scary.
Yeah. And also, let's see, well, like the endings of some letters at the ends of words are very
Correct.
long. That's like doing this.
Pushing away.
Yeah, holding people off.
Wow, I got a lot out of that one.
And there's lots more to get.
Okay.
Okay,
What do you
this
have
one.
now?
This is Jeff Sessions.
Jeff Sessions, our Attorney General,
Yeah,
currently.
unfortunately.
Okay, this was done when he was in the Senate, correct?
It was last year.
Yeah, okay, so this is 16.
Right.
Interesting.
I doubt it's changed any since then.
So what do you see in this one?
Well, if you think of what I just said about the ovals, and they need to be clear.
Yes.
They're terrible. They're just full of stuff. So I can see why he and Trump would get along, because they know how to, shall we put it the nice way and say, prevaricate.
Okay.
It's the handwriting of a manipulator, an exploiter, somebody who is extremely emotional. And see this Y here with a sharp angle on it?
Yes.
Which is down in the,
Correct.
the area that handwriting analysts look at as the subconscious. And it just suggests some real anger towards women.
I'm not really surprised on
Hidden
this one.
anger, yeah. He's a very emotional person. Yeah.
His signature. What do you get out of this
it
signature?
just says Jeff. Well, look, it's
Okay.
slashed through. It's all
Again.
covered up, and yeah. So you have birds of a feather.
So they're very much alike.
They are.
Hmm.
So
Disturbing.
rather than finishing on that note, I thought
on
I'd
a
bring
high
one
note
that I
here?
liked. This is Joe Biden.
Okay. So this is
and-
when he was vice president.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not perfect, and that's good. We don't want perfection. Only machines are perfect. So what we look for is a balance between contraction and release. And he has a good balance, and it's also highly simplified. So he's a quick thinker. He can make changes of direction easily. One thing, let's see, notice the very big loops on some of these letters. I think that's a D. And that big loops are like containers for emotion. So he's very emotional, very sensitive. He gets his feelings hurt easily. So he needs to walk around with a big pillow around him to save his feelings.
Easy to read his handwriting, as
Yep.
opposed to the two that you just showed me previously. It was difficult for me to read because of the style it was done in. Now this one's easy to read. So again, open.
Open and a little impulsive, which we know is true of him. It doesn't hold back a lot. It's a little more released than contracted. Actually, it looks quite a bit like Hillary's writing.
Oh,
I
you
didn't
did
bring
it. You
hers,
didn't bring a Hillary, but
No, it's on my website though, if
which
anybody's
I did
interested.
see it, and
Yeah.
I was fascinated by your website. So everybody, we'll put your website on there so everyone can see this. You did something on here that really intrigued me: how writing influences your brain. So I have students that I teach on my day off. They're average aged of about 85. I've got them currently handwriting. They are writing their own obituaries. It's one of the classes that I teach. And it's fascinating for me to see their handwriting. Now, you have to realize they're 85 years old, but I would imagine some of their handwriting is very consistent. And this one student I'm thinking about, she worked in Washington, D.C. Her husband was in the military, and her job was I believe she ran all the embassies for the U.S. government. And she's got extremely good handwriting to this day. So again, I was able to look at her handwriting and read it. But some of my others, maybe it just be age or infirmity, it's difficult to read. How much, on that note, what I'm trying to get across is how much changes over the period of a person's life as far as aging goes and reading into their handwriting? Is there any kind of correlation with that?
Well, it's a very individual thing. It depends on the person's physical, mental, emotional health.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Any consistencies?
Well, it's really hard to generalize. You can
Okay.
have somebody who is 85 and very strong, and their handwriting is strong. But if you have physical conditions, physiological changes show up in handwriting.
Okay.
So yes, there will be an effect, and your handwriting changes as you grow and change and have various experiences throughout your life.
Interesting again.
But some people are remarkably consistent throughout their lives, and some people are very changeable. So it's really an individual thing.
How fun, though. I'm fascinated by this. I want to talk about your books. You're also an author,
Yes.
and I'm looking at six different titles here. Mysteries?
These are mysteries. I have 2 books published about handwriting, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Handwriting
I
Analysis.
got to buy this one. Okay.
And
Amazon?
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
And Handwriting of the Famous and Infamous.
Oh, that's even better. Okay. So I'll be able
Yeah.
to read somebody's handwriting?
Well, the Idiot's Guide is like a basic course, but these are my mysteries, and they're about a handwriting expert. And people tell me that they learned something about handwriting analysis just from reading them.
You are so multi-talented. I'm just like blown away. You did bring up one thing that was off camera that really, I don't know if you want to reveal this, about your daughter.
Yeah. In 2000, my daughter was 27, and she had met a guy he was 34, a federal agent, and she brought me his handwriting. He had written out a sample for me, and it had some real serious red flags in it that only a handwriting analyst would notice. And I asked him if he'd had a blow to the head. Here's one of the instances where physiological artifacts show up in handwriting, and there was indications there. So I said, did you ever experience a blow to the head? And he said, yes, I was hit in the head so hard I was almost blinded. This was on the job. And he drank a lot, and my daughter drank a lot too. And it was just kind of an explosion waiting to happen. And I talked to them about the problems, the fact that he was an authoritarian personality. He needed to be in control, and she could not be controlled. I mean, when she told me once, I've known what I needed since I was 6 years old, you should just let me make my own decisions. And of course I said that was not my job.
Right.
But we discussed the problems, and of course she didn't listen, and he moved in with her, and within a year he had killed her and himself. So handwriting provides a lot of important information, but if we don't listen to it, then it doesn't help. I mean, I married a guy who, when I looked at his handwriting, I knew what the problems were going to be, and I did it anyway.
Well, you know, your heart can't always make good judgments. But it's interesting that, you know, I'm just fascinated by the medium that you work in, because it provides information for people. But it also is, I would imagine, I mean, do you just, as a rule, if you see someone's handwriting, do you just kind of like, if you look over their shoulder, you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Sure.
It just kind of follows suit that you just kind of do this, you know, for information.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, after doing it for 50 years, it's kind of second nature.
It spills over into your everyday life.
Yeah, and there's 2 different kinds of handwriting analysis. There's one called the trait stroke, which that group is empirical, atomistic. Like they look at the individual little pieces of handwriting and they build up a picture of personality. I don't do that. I use the Gestalt method, which looks at handwriting like a picture. Spatial arrangement on the page, the letter forms, which is like equivalent to the font, and the writing movement, which includes speed and pressure and rhythm and lots of things like that. So learning the Gestalt method, it's kind of more intuitive. Once you know the principles, you just sort of get it.
I'm just so fascinated by what you do. I'm grateful you came on today. Thank you for being a part of this today. I've got to get your book, so everything's on Amazon?
Yes.
Okay, Sheila Lowe, wow. I have learned a lot, and go and also Google Sheila's. Some of her samples are on the website of some of the candidates that ran for office last year, such as Hillary, Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina, pretty much accurate by looking at the way they sign their signature. About not a surprise on some of these.
Right. Marco Rubio's was interesting because it's just, it looks like it says mama. It looks like a big M-A-M-A.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Mr. Stark, did you see that glass dome dude I took down? Tripped me out. Oh. Hey, everyone. You're still here? Show's over, though. Oh, you liked it. That's why you're still here. Got it. Wait, were you expecting an after-credit scene in a Schmooze with Sue show? Really? Well, we here at Ventura Adult and Continuing Education would never make you sit through a full episode for an after-credit scene. Who would do that? Oh. Hey, Cap. Yeah, no.